Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Friday Footy Talk with the Ace Football Academy. Coach Hamilton alongside Coach Dunham. Coach, I will go ahead and apologize. I'm a little under the weather, so I am hacking and coughing and sound congested a little bit. So,
Breathe
apologies.
that way.
Apologies for any video or audio quality on my end. Coach, I really like tonight's topic that we're going to dive into. We're going to talk about the role of captains. So if you go back into some earlier episodes, you and I broke down how we elect captains, how we choose captains, how we vote on captains, whatever it is that you and I do. I think you and I are a little different on that, but that's not what tonight's about. Tonight is about, all right, we have elected our captains, or we have voted on our captains, or we have chosen our captains, whatever it is. So now we're going to dive into the role of the captain, and he's also a little under the weather. Don't let him do it. The role of the captain just in youth soccer, but those ages 12 to 18 where having leadership on those teams does matter, does play a role into the success of your team. And so we're going to really dive into what the role of a captain looks like. And I think what you're going to find is it's a little different. You and I are going to have lots of similarities and commonalities as we talk about this, but I also think we're going to have some differences about the role that we put on our captains. And myself especially, we'll get into that because when my first captains meeting, I tell my captains, I know I'm a crazy person, but here's how this is going to work. So, Coach, I'm really excited about this conversation because it's one of the things I like most about coaching.
Yeah, and I think the important thing that the listeners will get out of this by the end is one part as the coach is you're developing their talent as a soccer player. We're also developing their ability to grow to be an adult.
Yes.
And sometimes kids at younger ages develop or kind of automatically have those leadership skills in them at young ages. It could be their personality.
Yeah.
It could be a father or a mother that has instilled that in them through the early years of life.
Yep.
And now we're kind of developing that a little bit more. So we're focusing on the development side of the leadership skills of the captain as well as the players on the team and how all that kind of interacts.
So I think, for the common fan of any sport, right? What is a captain? Oh, it's the person who just goes and does the coin toss and they call heads or tails. But then after that, nothing really changes, right? And all those types of things. But especially in youth sports, I think the role of a captain goes so much deeper. And I know you and I are going to get into some different personality for you and I personality or how we view that role. But I think the starting point is let's talk about those core qualities. So even if you're going to vote on captains, what are some core qualities, coach, that you kind of expect your captain, which is, the leader on your team, to show up with day in and day out?
Yeah, I think there's a list, and I think you go beyond the list that we've got here. But I think the number one thing is communication. And obviously communication being verbal, like you and I are talking about ideas back and forth, giving opinions.
Right.
Hey, I'm asking you to do this, you're asking something in return. Sometimes you get players that have leadership skills, but it's nonverbal.
Yeah.
They're the hardest working player. They're the biggest cheerleader sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're down 3-0, they're the one player saying, "We've still got this.
Yeah.
Let's go."
Well, and so let me just dive in on communication before you start. You mentioned communication like on the field and stuff, but I think it's also with the coach, right? In a training. Hey, coach, it's very clear that our ace isn't where it needs to be right now. We need to take a water break, and you need to let me talk to them.
That'll be huge.
Right? And so, like, to have that communication too. Or, hey, coach, we've been playing this 4-4-2 and we're getting gashed in the middle of the field. Can we look at moving to a 4-2-3-1 or, whatever it is, right? But also being able to communicate not only with your teammates, because that is probably the most important, but the having the maturity and the confidence to also look at your coach and go, hey, coach, this isn't working. We need to try something different.
Yeah, the other areas that we like is responsibility. Hey, I've made a mistake, but I'm not blaming somebody else. Composure. I'm not freaking out because we're down a goal. Or there's a minute to go in the game, they just scored. Ugh, tough situation. How is that person handling that situation? Are they blaming somebody else? Right. Are they taking accountability? And the last one is respect. You and I understand that there are players that just are not respected.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got a mouth on them. They're not great on the field. They got a bad attitude. You've got to have a player that's respected by everyone on that team.
Yeah.
And with the versatility of personalities and different cultural backgrounds you can be dealing with, having respect is a big deal, because if I don't respect you as a player, why am I listening to you? Why am I following you on the field?
Well, and so with that respect, in a lot of times the respect goes through how you've seen them perform in trainings, how you've seen them perform in matches and in emotional situations and things like that, right? So that just kind of goes back to all those other things you talked about. For me, the one I love, of course, communication is key, right? But the one I love more than anything, and I think it's because just until the end of last season and this past fall season, so the end of last, what month are we in? June? The end of last fall and then this spring season, I I've really started to, and you and I've talked about this on air on our podcast, trying to build that composure piece into your. I've been trying to build it into my teams, but I've learned that, man, that comes through the leaders on the team. That comes through the captains, right? Hey, girls, we're down 1-0. Can everybody just relax and let's get back to doing what we do, and we'll see what happens. And then you turn around and you're up 2-1, right? And just, but I think that composure piece is so important.
I can't express how true all these statements are, because you have girls that are stepping up saying, Coach, we've got to handle this ourselves. I'm watching my son's team this past fall, and when they're behind, a lot of times they'll go up 2-0 or whatever, and their team will come back in the second half. The finger pointing that goes on.
Oh, yeah.
And I keep telling my son, look, there is no leader on the field. Step up and start speaking to your teammates. They clearly respect you. All right? It doesn't need to be, you don't need to shout at anybody. It's all about getting people together to say, hey, everybody needs to relax. Everybody calm down, refocus. Hey. And I start explaining ways of how we should say it. Like, young kids are probably going to say something along the lines of, hey, stop doing that. Pass me the ball. I'm wide open.
Right.
Rephrase that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, next time you're out on the wing, look for me in the center. I'm open a lot of times, and we can play a little 1-2 together, make a nice little combo. Let's work that together next time, bud.
Yep, absolutely.
It's all about the approach in talking to your teammates.
I think the next part here, we have it written down as leadership versus skill. I also look at it as leadership versus captain, right? Like, you can be a leader and not a captain. You can be a leader and you can be a captain, but also not a leader. But I think what is important here is if Dunham is our leading goal scorer and he's leading the league in goals scored and he is this phenomenal striker, that doesn't necessarily mean he's the best player to be captain on our team.
Absolutely. 100%.
And it goes back to those core qualities. Maybe Dunham is just a damn good soccer player and can score. If you put him in position, he's going to find the back of the net 95% of the time. And that is awesome. And wouldn't we all love to have that on our teams? Right? But he also might not be a great communicator. He may not also want that responsibility of leading a team. He's just like, no, you know what? I'm just here to score the goals, and I'll help in any way I can, but I'm just here to score the goals.
Yeah.
And so I think that understanding that leadership doesn't always match the skill that you see on the pitch. The next role coach here, and this one we kind of already talked quite a bit about when we talk about just the emotional maturity, especially at those younger ages, as you mentioned. Leadership has to go from, hey, I need you to pass me the ball, to, hey, could we look at it this way? Yeah. Right? The way you talk to your teammates, the way you talk to your coaches, right? Yeah. Coach, nobody's giving me the ball. Coach, the middle of the field is wide open. We've got to find a way to get the ball there, right? That emotional maturity, and of course, a lot of that comes with growing up and comes with age, and those things happen. But you can also kind of see those on the field as players grow up. The other side of it is off the field, especially, and this is so big for me, especially when you and I look at it as current or former or whatever you want to spin it, school coaches, right? I need and shouldn't I shouldn't exclude club from this because I think it's important on the club side. But you want leaders off the field too. Hey, we just played a really chippy game, but you're going to get in this line. We're going to shake their hands and we're going to tell them good game.
And there's players that need that.
Yeah. And I understand that referee called a questionable PK with 90 seconds to go and we got beat by a goal, but we're going to go tell the referee thank you. And I have a hard time with that sometimes as a coach, right? I mean, we get frustrated. And so having that emotional maturity on and off the field is very, very big.
Yeah. And sometimes being loud, sometimes being someone that's outspoken, that's not afraid to communicate, doesn't make them a good leader.
Correct.
I can't speak for you, but I feel like we both have had bosses or supervisors or somebody that you're just thinking, why is this guy so loud? He doesn't need to be this loud. Can he stop talking for 5 seconds to let me answer a question that he's clearly trying to ask? Mm-hmm. And sometimes those leaders struggle to get good camaraderie within their team.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach, let's move on to some other things. We've talked a lot about communicating. But let's kind of just spin that into, we've talked about communicating within your team, right? And to your coach. Communicating with the referee and even the opposing team, right? It is easy, and I shouldn't say easy, but it is easier to communicate when you're up 3-0 and things are going swimmingly and you've scored a goal off of a set piece from right outside the box because the referee called a foul, and you scored off of a PK because the referee gave. So, it's easy to communicate then, but it's flipping the script there when, man, it feels like things are really going against us right now. And I want to, as the captain, I want to approach the referee and say, excuse me, sir, can you explain to me what that call was, or how we're not getting that same call on the other end, right? Being able to handle it that way. And again, we're not talking, you and I both know that there are referees and that there are other teams who are not going to respond the way we want them to, no matter how respectful we are. Mm-hmm. But we're just talking about how our captain approaches the referee or the other teams in those moments.
I think the other side of that is when to approach that referee. Yeah. Obviously, you're probably not going to do it while the game's playing, although, I mean, it happens from time to time. But you got to choose your battles. Mm-hmm. You might be frustrated that things are getting a little bit chippy. You may have to let those go. But maybe he missed, like you said, a penalty kick, or he missed a situation where somebody should have gotten carded. When there's that dead ball, and you're really confused at this point, now it's time to turn and say, hey, ref, I'm not following
what happened here.
Where you're going with some of these calls. Can you give me... I'll talk to my team.
Yeah.
But we've got to understand where you're at on some of these calls. And finding that time of the game, because if you're bickering
Correct.
every 2 to 3 minutes, that ref, number one, is probably going to shut you down.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, he's going to stop answering anything you want from him. So it's understanding the moments and choosing your battles of what's worth having a discussion about or arguing about. But there's a right and a wrong time during a game to approach referees on these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think handling the opposing team respectfully, you hope there's not a lot of, and again, you and I both know that it happens. We're not naive idiots, right? We both know, but you hope that at the end of the game, your captains are going to be able to, hey, we're going to go through this line and shake hands. And, I know you and number 27 were chirping at each other the whole game, but now the game's over. It's time to shake hands and get ready for next week or get ready for whatever it is, right? So I think that is a little more difficult, but also maybe hopefully you don't have to deal with a whole lot of because your captains have control. I love the next topic here, coaches. I think the next two topics we're going to talk about are really, really important. A phrase I use with my girls all the time is, I don't know, maybe I'm coaching different combinations in the attacking third, right? Or different combinations to build out of the back or whatever it is. And I'll say to them, however, ladies, you have to understand that you have to see this yourself on the field. I can't call a timeout. I can't say, hey, they're pressuring the outside, so can we play up the middle or, whatever it is. Your captain has to be the one that can organize your team during those set pieces, during those moments of, okay, we've been trying to build out of the back for 3 minutes now, and all we continue to do is have goal kick after goal kick after goal kick. Are your captains able to say, all right, hey, everybody focus and take a look at what we have?
Yeah, I think the other topic on this, and I think this is just as critical, is the team morale while the game is going on. We always want to focus on, hey, we conceded a goal, we conceded a second goal, we're down 2-0. I think the other side of that is when you're up 2-0. We always say 2-0 is the most dangerous score in soccer because the next goal will decide if the other team's going to get back into it or if you're just going to take the game away.
Right.
Especially if it's the first half. And it's keeping your team focused on the agenda at hand. It's so easy to be up 2-3-0 and be like, this game's over, we got this, we can sit back. Yeah. And then the team comes back and scores 3 goals in the last 10 minutes of the game, and you're thinking, what just happened? When your leadership steps up and says, hey, I need you to stay focused over here. Right. That winger still got speed, or they'll start working combos on us. Let's start shutting that down. Yep. So your captain's got to be able to say, hey, we're up, but we're getting a little too lenient on our defending here. So communication, understanding what's going on in the game, communicate properly to your teammates, and staying focused here.
So I just want to kind of piggyback on that for just a real quick second, right? I think sounds like we're putting a lot of pressure on captains, right, to handle everything perfectly in those moments. And we know that's not going to happen. Sometimes Dunham is going to be having a really poor game. But I also think that's why, as a coach or as a team, you elect multiple captains with multiple strengths and weaknesses, right? Where, all right, Dunham's having a poor game and he has just lost his mind on the official. But now, as the other captain, I need to come in and say, dude, I understand you are frustrated, but I need you to refocus on what we're trying to do here, right? And so we are not asking captains to be perfect because that would be super unrealistic. But I think just keeping in mind those roles of the captain, also you have to understand that there's a reason we have multiple captains. Sometimes 3 or 4 captains on a team. It's because we understand that sometimes the emotional maturity isn't quite there. Sometimes we're just having one of those days and I'm upset about everything, right? And so as we move into this next segment, we're going to do a little real life scenario role playing here. So you're the captain of my team, right? And I'm gonna pose this question at you two different ways. So I'm gonna pose it the first way you have it written, and I'm gonna pose it the second way. So, captain, you're my captain, and hothead number 6 on our team has just been shown a red card early in the second half in a 1-1 match, and now the coach has kind of lost his cool. He's yelling at the referee, wanting to know what the red card was for, wanting to know what the call. So now your role as a captain, what is your next move?
Well, it sounds like it's a chaotic scene.
Right, absolutely, right?
So
which most red cards are. I mean,
most red cards are. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to take a step back and say, okay, what's my scene looking like? Is my coach handling a situation? What's my player that just got ejected? What's he doing? What's his emotional status at that point in time? And I think I'm trying to focus on the biggest, I guess, red alert, I guess you could say.
Right.
You know, if my guy that just got red carded is screaming at the ref, I'm getting in between them. And I'm probably facing my player saying, bro, we're not helping the situation
it's
here.
over now.
I get it. You don't like the call. You're not helping the situation.
And shout out to players, like, once the card is shown, there's nothing you're going to do or say that's going to make
It's
the
not going
referee
to reverse.
make the referee go, oh, you know what? Never mind. Just kidding.
Now let's reverse that. Let's say the guy that got ejected, he's mad, but he's walking off. And my coach has stepped onto the field.
Yeah.
Well, now I've got to play daddy here and step in between him and the referee and be like, oh, coach, hey, let me handle it.
Yeah.
Give me 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Give me 2 minutes. You take a cool. And maybe the coach just ignore you, and that's a very good possibility. Yep. Of course, it depends on the age we're talking about here.
Correct.
Hopefully, some kid in high school will be brave enough to step in that situation. Not all will. But again, that's asking a lot from a captain.
Yeah.
It really is.
Absolutely.
And that's a lot of courage to step in between a player or a coach and the referee trying to diffuse a situation.
Yeah.
Is it going to happen? Maybe 2 out of 10 times, depending on, again, we're trying to be as realistic as possible here. But let's say that is happening. To be a little more realistic is I might just sit there and watch the situation because it's so chaotic. It's a situation I've never been a part of.
Yeah.
How do you really handle a situation that you've never seen in your life?
Yeah.
Especially when your coach is coming on the field. I'm probably going to be a little nervous.
Yeah, absolutely.
To step in between that.
Right. And then you kind of answered I was going to pose that question in 2 parts. Where, what do you do when your coach has been given a red card? Right? How do you respond in that moment? Because sure, we have some good assistants, but I mean, again, we're talking like drastic scenarios at this point. But I know, like for you and I as club coaches, if we were to be shown a red card for whatever reason, then our team manager would be coming over to coach our team, right? Because they're the only other one allowed on the sideline. So then, how important is a captain then, right? To say, okay, I'm kind of the coach now, right? So lots of fun, different scenarios here, there, coach. Let's move on to just a couple other topics to point out for both of us. When choosing a captain, yeah, as you kind of led off with at the beginning of our episode, yes, we are choosing a captain who we think is going to help our team perform on the soccer field. But that's not, especially at these youth levels, is where we're talking about. That's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to help these individuals who we see leadership qualities in become a leader in life, whether they become a CEO, whether they become a teacher, whether they become, owner of their own business or whatever it is, right? We want to give them those abilities to lead in life. And so you get into different scenarios where maybe you have a player who's just kind of really shy, but you can kind of see that your team watches him or her play, right? They don't maybe necessarily lean on them for their words, for their communication, but it's their effort. It's the way they play the game that you kind of see people gravitate toward, and so you're like, all right, I need to make this player a captain because of that.
I think the other side of this is, and we're kind of talking about people being shy or an introvert, and we both know public speaking or speaking in front of a group can be kind of intimidating. But what if that other captain is really good at one-on-one conversations?
Yeah, 100%.
You know, you've got your center man that's having a bad day. Well, maybe that captain is the one that walks over, puts their arm around them, and say, "Hey, we still need you.
Yeah,
we got your back. Just keep trucking along."
Yep.
Okay. Or maybe they're in practice and you see somebody kind of being a little sluggish, and they pull them. Hey, come walk with me real quick.
Yeah, let's go on.
Maybe they're just great at one-on-one relationships with their teammates, and the other captain is great at speaking to the group, speaking to the team,
being the vocal
person in the middle of a game.
Yep.
And sometimes you just need that extra person on the side to encourage that one person in practice, encourage that one person during the game. And that's just as beneficial as the person that can speak in front of anybody.
Well, and something to go right along with that. But, we're talking about the shy, the introvert, but also what about like the non-starter? What about the player who only plays 8 to 12 minutes a half, but they're leading the cheers on the sideline. They're the one first off the bench is, when you sub somebody off and they're like, hey, here's your water, way to play. Or even more, how big would this be when, hey, I know I'm not going to get in the game, but I've been watching your play, and the guy you're matched up against on the wing a lot one-on-one always goes to the left. Right? Like, what about being able to give those points of advice?
Yeah.
So just, those captains who, I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, where, your captain isn't always your best player. Your captain also doesn't have to be somebody who plays a ton, right? It has to be somebody who understands their role and is truly there to help lead the team in any way that they can.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that is these are kids.
Yep.
And they're going to make a lot of mistakes. Even the kids that are not captains, the kids that are starters or coming off the bench, but that's where they learn the most.
Yep.
Sometimes a humiliating situation where they made a mistake in the middle of practice and everybody, maybe that's the trigger point where like, okay, I know what I'm doing wrong now.
Yep.
And it just clicks in their head.
Yep.
I know when I was coaching, I tried to get them to understand, hey, I want you to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because it gives you the moment to say, all right, that didn't work the last 3 times that I did it. Maybe I'll try it a different way, and now this will work. So our failures can turn into successes, and that's what we call experience, people, is experiencing things and learning from them. So it takes a little resilience, some accountability. But again, we're developing adults here, folks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're not trying to make superstar champions, because not everybody can be that. But everyone is going to be an adult one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you mentioned about making a mistake. And I think you and I are on the same wavelength. I bet you I say at least once every training, oftentimes more, hey, if you're not screwing up, you're not working hard enough for me. Right? If you haven't made a mistake, we've been practicing for 45 minutes. We're halfway through training. If you haven't made a mistake yet, you're not working hard enough. If you haven't had a bad touch, if you didn't play a bad ball, if you, kind of what you mentioned, if you didn't try and do a step over and you trip over the ball and fall on your face, right? You're not working hard enough for me. So let's pick it up. And we kind of have already leaned toward this, Coach. We're not just developing soccer players at this youth level. We're developing humans. We're developing adults, and that's our job. That's what can't get lost on. So, I guess to just kind of wrap up here real quickly, and I think you and I would both agree, we have to get away from that idea of captains being the player who wears the armband and they go out and they call heads or tails at the beginning of the game, right? It's more than that. And so, to those players that are listening, if you're a captain on your team, or you strive to be a captain on your team, you have to take that responsibility and really understand what comes with that. It is not just the fact that you're the best player on the team. And you and I think have made it very clear. Oftentimes, you're not the best player on the team. It is the fact that you have the ability to influence and to control the culture that your head coach is trying to build. And that's what makes being a captain so important. Coach, really fun episode tonight. I love this episode. I could talk captains for hours on end. So, again, as we move into the start of school seasons for a lot of people in this area, into the fall season for club soccer, captains, coaches, understand that role, understand the pride that should come with captaincy, and we appreciate you for tuning in. Coach Dunham, Coach Hamilton, this has been Friday Footy Talk for June 13th. We are the Ace Football Academy. Go kick some ace.